Hey, what's going on? It's Jeff Newport from ChasingStrength.com. And in this video, I want to make it as a follow-up video. And actually, I'm just going to make a series of videos where we're going to talk about the 5 levels of kettlebell training. And in this one, we are going to cover level 1 kettlebell exercises. But before we do, I want to tell you why I finally swallowed my pride and decided to become a certified kettlebell instructor, nonetheless. Not just a kettlebell instructor, but a certified kettlebell instructor. And that's primarily because of bruises. See, when I first started training with kettlebells back in 2002, January 2002, we would get bruises on the back of our wrists here and on our shoulders and on the front of our shoulders, side of the shoulders and front of the shoulders from doing snatches and cleans. And you know what? I thought I was hardcore. And my clients who I trained with kettlebells, they thought they were hardcore too. We actually wore these bruises as like badges of honor, right? Like other people would see them and we go, oh, those? Yeah, that's from doing kettlebells. And, we'd say that with our head held high, kind of with an air of snobbery, probably. And, the other people who would ask us those about the bruises, they go, wow, man, that's really hardcore. Again, that was way back in 2002, between 2002, 2005. But honestly, I never told anybody at the time. I was actually pretty discouraged about that because at that time I was a relatively high level Olympic lifter. I'd qualified for national championships a few years earlier. I'd won the state championships, and I was currently retraining for a nationals qualification meet in between injuries. And for the life of me, I just could not figure out how to stop getting bruises. All right. So then I found out that skinny Russian dude, right? You might know him, Pavel Tsatsouline, the father of the modern kettlebell movement, who's since become a good friend of mine. He could pretty much get anybody, including Grandma Betty, swinging a kettlebell in approximately 5 minutes. And, that just chapped my rear end, as they say out here in the West, right? They actually say something else. They don't say rear end, but we have to keep this PG. Okay. So what just drove me crazy is my personal training company. I was the co-owner of a personal training company at the time, and we were using a very complicated system based on physical therapy, and it was super conservative. And it literally took forever to get someone swinging a kettlebell, like 16 weeks or so. So the final straw for me is no matter how much I had gone through this physical therapy-based personal training program or personal training model, right? I still could not get my lower back to not hurt doing 2-hand kettlebell swings. Just drove me nuts. I mean, for the love of Pete, right? Right before I decided to go to the RKC cert in 2005, I couldn't swing a 32 kilo kettlebell without my lower back hurting on 2-hand swings, but I could do snatch grip deadlifts from below the knee with 270 kilos for a triple. That's where my training was at the time. And you know what? My pride just could not take it any longer. I just had to know the secrets. So I ponied up to $1,500 for the RKC, which is called the Russian Kettlebell Challenge, the instructor certification. It was the only one at the time. And, that sounds like a lot of money because, well, it is, right? But that doesn't include the airfare, the hotel, and the opportunity costs of missing personal training sessions, which, all told, I think the first cert that I went to cost me somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 to go and attend, right? But again, it was worth it to me. So I dragged my relatively freshly cortisone shot butt from North Carolina up to St. Paul, Minneapolis. And the reason I say freshly cortisoned butt, all right, it's actually hip, is I had just injured that January. This is June of 2005. In January, I just injured my right hip lifting. And I finally broke down and got a cortisone shot in April of 2005, right? So back then, there was no YouTube. You're watching this on YouTube. There's no YouTube back in 2005. All right. So all I had was the Russian Kettlebell Challenge book and VHS tape. Yeah. If you guys are my age, you probably remember the VHS tapes. Good times. So the kettlebell techniques back then weren't nearly as dialed in as they are now. For example, now the Turkish getup is very specific in how you perform it. Back then it was, here's how you get up and how you get down is your own business, right? So we've really evolved, come a long way. So long story short, here was the outcome of me going to the RKC. I figured out how to no longer bang my arms or shoulders on the snatches and cleans, and then I was able to relay that to my clients. And, we were a little disappointed we didn't have badges of honor, but it felt good no longer having bruised forearms and shoulders. I figured out how to wedge correctly so my lower back didn't hurt on the two-hand swing. And I learned the teaching cues that I went there to learn, which allowed even Grandma Betty to swing a kettlebell in record time, bypassing and negating the system we had been using in my personal training business, which was driving me nuts. So there was one thing, however, that just shocked me, and it was the relentless focus on the basics and how they set you up for either success or failure with the quote unquote intermediate kettlebell exercises. So let's do a quick review here. I'm going to pull up the basics. Here are the boring basics, level 1. Right. So level 1, you see, we've got the swing, the Turkish get up, and the goblet squat. Okay. Now let's just briefly cover off on the benefits of these quote unquote basics and what they will do for you, because even though it's basic, they're really powerful. All right. So the swing counters sitting all day and trains the muscles that move you, the posterior chain, which are the muscles you can't see in the mirror. So your glutes, hamstrings, lower back, calves, and actually even trains your abs too. All right. So the swings, they train your grip. The swing improves your heart and lung function and builds cardiorespiratory fitness. That's super important considering that the number one killer of men, and in fact, I think at this point, the time I'm making this video, the number one killer in the world for both men and women is heart disease. So why not extend your life longer by improving your cardiorespiratory fitness and slowing down heart disease, or even reversing it, or even keeping it at bay altogether? All right. The swing, it's a platform upon which the clean and the snatch are built. So it trains the hip hinge movement pattern and also trains proper breathing mechanics under load. Okay. So the swing also develops or redevelops power and trains your fast twitch muscle fibers, which is super important because we lose the ability to produce power and we lose our fast twitch muscle fibers as we age. In fact, men especially, they lose 10% of their muscle mass, and that comes from fast twitch muscle fibers, a minimum of 10% per decade after the age of 30. So if you do the math, between 30 and 70, if you don't train these things, you're going to lose 40% of your muscle mass, and your power is pretty much gone, since the fast twitch muscle fibers are the muscle fibers designed or responsible for producing power. Some other neat things about the swing: rehabilitates lower backs, rehabilitates bad knees. Right, seem to do both of those things. So that's a bonus for many people. And the swing is typically the one kettlebell exercise all other kettlebell exercises are built off or from. Right, it is the foundational exercise for all kettlebell exercises, at least in the modern Western kettlebell training world. Okay. So it's often referred to as the center of the kettlebell universe. In fact, one of my good friends, retired master instructor, Mark Rifkin, interesting dude. He's in his mid-60s, competitive gymnast, competitive power lifter, endurance guy. I mean, he's just run the gamut. And he's been training other people probably close to 40 years, maybe a little longer. This is what Mark says about the swing. He says, it has been said that a properly executed kettlebell swing is better than 99% of all strength and conditioning exercises. I respectfully disagree. I believe it is better than 100% of all the strength and conditioning exercises, at least for 99% of the people. Pretty powerful words. So the question is he right? Well, he's not wrong. Right? So definitely food for thought. Let's take a look at the Turkish get-up. Some say it's the perfect demonstration of the human developmental sequence, which is basically the sequence we go through from birth to about 18 months to go from a whining, crying, pooping bundle of nothing, right, of joy, to an upright and mobile little person. Okay, that's called the human developmental sequence. So the Turkish get-up also improves shoulder mobility, stability, and flexibility. It also teaches the arm where to live overhead in relation to the body, preparing you for the military press and the snatch, right? All right, which I got a mirrored view here on the camera. So don't look at this elbow, which doesn't straighten, but look at this elbow, which does, right? So it teaches you how to put your arm over your head and where it lives in the shoulder socket relative to the rest of your body and to the ground. Okay, so pretty important, especially if you're doing things like the military press, the snatch, push press, and the jerk as you progress through level 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. Okay, so the Turkish get-up also teaches you how to lock the rib cage on top of the pelvis and make the body one piece, which is pretty important for athletics. Okay, and it also, the Turkish get-up improves mobility in the hips and improves flexibility in your leg musculature, like your quads and your hamstrings and your calves. In fact, many in the kettlebell communities over the last 20 years have reported that the Turkish get-up has fixed their old shoulder injuries when nothing else has helped. So pretty powerful. Others have reported that it strengthened their military press. Personally, I use it as a de-stressor. I like feeling the heavy weight in my hand push me against the ground. So I feel the ground rubbing against my back. Feels pretty good at the end of a long day. And that's super important for me because most of my lifting is done standing, and I use both hands. So let's see, what do we got next? We got the goblet squat. So here's a pretty fascinating thing about the goblet squat is most people can't squat anymore, right? They got bad knees, bad backs, and most of that is from misuse or disuse. But the goblet squat is fantastic because it rebuilds that squat pattern, and it allows people who can't squat with just their body weight to be able to squat using a counterbalance, right? So super important. So again, it restores the squat pattern. It greases open the hips, making squats and swings easier, stronger, more fluid, and more powerful. So the goblet squat also aids in correcting poor posture from sitting all day. And this one's also very fascinating. It reflexively trains the deep abdominal musculature, also known as the inner unit, and strengthens the pelvic floor, which when stiff contributes to those tight hips or that hip immobility. Okay, so pretty powerful. The goblet squat also teaches proper breathing mechanics under load. It replaces the barbell back squat for many who have had lower back, shoulder, knee, or hip issues, right? Way easier than the barbell back squat. And it's still squat, so it still counts, all right? Regardless of what some strength coaches may say. And interestingly, even with a lighter weight, the goblet squat still builds muscle if you use the right loads with the right volume, okay? So you don't have to train your squat super heavy to build strong muscular legs. Goblet squat is a nice squat in order to do that. Less stress on the body too. So in fact, I would actually probably go so far as to say, and I'm sure there are many other coaches who would agree with me, that the goblet squat is probably the one squat you should seek to maintain for the rest of your life, right? So between today and the day you step over into eternity, you should still be able to hit the goblet squat, okay? And if you can't, that's a pretty good indicator that something's gone wrong in your training, and you should turn around immediately and address that thing that's gone wrong, okay? Furthermore, here's the other interesting thing, the other interesting reason about why you should maintain your goblet squat. Because if you've had multiple hip injuries like I have and lower back injuries like I have, right, the goblet squat rebuilds that squat pattern like I mentioned, but it becomes a stepping stone to the other types of squats that you may have done in the past, especially if you want to do them again. So it becomes a stepping stone to heavier kettlebell squats, like the double kettlebell front squat, heavier barbell squats, like the Zercher squat, the front squat, the back squat, and the overhead squat. So I believe it all starts with the goblet squat. All right. And the final thing about the benefit of the goblet squat is that recent scientific studies have shown us that leg strength and leg circumference, or thigh circumference, are leading indicators of longevity. So said another way, if you've got weak legs and skinny legs, you're probably not going to live longer than the average bear or the average human. All right. All right. So let's talk about programming. There are lots of variables that go into programming these 3 exercises. The simplest concept, or the 30,000 foot view, is to slowly build up the amount of work you can do, which is called volume. And then you cut your rest times, and that's called density. So you're trying to get more work in the same or less amount of time. Okay. So I guess we could say that 3 different ways. More work in the same time, the same amount of work in less time, or more work in less time, right? So you're going to focus on the density. And then from there, you just grab a bigger kettlebell, and that would be focusing on what we call intensity. Okay. People ask me, hey, look, are there any programs that you can recommend for these level 1 exercises? And yeah, the two basic programs I recommend are Pavel's Simple and Sinister 2.0. I'll put a link below this video. And then I have a swing only program. It's not one program. It's actually 10 different programs. It's called Swing Hard. And those are about 15 to 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week. I'll put a link under this video if you're interested in that. All right. So that covers the level 1 exercises. In the next video, we'll move up the pyramid and we will cover the level 2 exercises. All right. Appreciate you watching. Hope you found this helpful. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it for you. I'll talk to you soon, my friend. Stay strong.